Shalom. The 8-day festival of Chanukah commences this Sunday night, and this week's Torah portion is Parashat Vayeshev, meaning, and he dwelled, starting in Genesis chapter 37. Our portion begins the saga of Yosef, Yaakov's favorite son, the son born in his old age, the child of his beloved Rachel. The portion of Vayeshev is generally read either immediately before or during Chanukah. Our experience in Torah study has shown us that there is a divine synchronicity that links between the weekly Torah readings and the sanctified times and special days. We know that whatever portion is being read at a particular time doesn't just happen to fall out that way. Nothing is coincidental. And indeed, there are multiple levels of meaning that connect the persona of Yosef to Chanukah, revealing lessons for our own lives as well. At this stage of his life, we might have hoped that Yaakov has finally earned some tranquility back in the land of Canaan. He has freed himself from the manipulations of Lavan, and the confrontation with Esau and the tragedy of Dinah and the vengeance of Shimon and Levi are all behind him. But the worst is yet to come. For a terrible tension exists between Yosef and his brothers, a bitter enmity that Torah indeed describes as hatred. His brothers saw that it was he whom their father loved most of all his brothers, so they hated him, and they could not speak to him peaceably. But there is far more going on than meets the eye. From our studies thus far in the book of Bereshit, we are well aware that we are not simply reading stories in what ostensibly appears to be a book of stories. These generations are peopled with archetypes, who themselves transcend their own personal identity and become the expressions of universal themes, great rectifications that God sets in motion in the form of historical processes. These are templates for the future, all allowing for free choice that will reverberate until the time of redemption. Just as Rebekah was informed that the children in her womb, Yaakov and Esav, are not simply two individuals, but nations, so too there is much more to Yosef and his brothers than Yosef and his brothers. There is inner meaning to their contention. They disagreed over the proper way to serve God in this world. Yaakov recognized a special quality of righteousness in Yosef's very essence. As our sages teach, Yosef HaTzadik, the righteous Joseph, was a pillar holding up the world, blessed with divine wisdom and led by Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration, from the day he was born until the day he died. Yaakov thus gave all the Torah knowledge which he had received from Shem and Ever over to him. Yaakov was confident that Yosef was the one who would lead the nation to be God's agent in preparing for the next stage of history, the next step towards reconciling humanity with God and repairing what went wrong in the Garden of Eden. In addition to sharing with him the innermost secrets of Torah knowledge, Yaakov presented Yosef with a special garment, which was the emblem of this transmission of the forefathers' legacy to Yosef. But to the brothers, these actions appeared as blatant display of favoritism, and this certainly contributed to and even cemented their feelings of jealousy, accelerating their hatred towards Yosef. Yosef further alienated his brothers by telling them his dreams. He said to them, "Hear, if you please, this dream which I dreamt. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the middle of the field, when behold, my sheaf arose and also remained standing. Then behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Would you then reign over us? Would you then dominate us?" And they hated him even more because of his dreams and because of his talk. He dreamt another dream and related it to his brothers, and he said, "Behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So open up your heart. Seriously? What inexplicable behavior! Interpreting Yosef's two dreams was not rocket science. They'll all come to bow down before him. Exactly what happens later in Egypt, when his brothers did not recognize the mysterious figure before them and bowed down before him. But why did Yosef tell them this? He already knew that his brothers were not favorably disposed toward him. Why alienate them? Why add fuel to the flames by telling them his dreams? Who does that? And an even deeper question, why did Yosef have to have this dream? Why did God have to show him that? And why did they need to bow down before him? The brothers disparagingly called him a dreamer. In verse 19 of chapter 37, they said to one another, "Look, here comes that dreamer." But the Hebrew expression they use, Baal HaChalamot, means master of dreams. This is why they were concerned. They knew he was no idle dreamer. And the father, Yaakov, he kept the thing in mind, biding the time and waiting for it to be fulfilled. So what's up with Yosef in dreams? Dreams are so interwoven in the life of this righteous boy, not yet a man. He was sold down to Egypt as a result of his own dreams, and his rise to greatness in that place of darkness and impurity was also on account of dreams, those of the chief steward and the chief baker, and finally, the dreams of Pharaoh himself. Torah's message is eternal and for all of us. So Yosef's dreams are a sign for future generations as well. Torah is neither a history book nor a storybook. So what do these dreams really teach us? So open up your heart in the deepest way. How do we understand what it means to dream? I want to understand dreaming because Yosef is a dreamer. Dreams are dreamed in darkness. And Yosef enters into the world of darkness that is Egypt. Now, to dream is to experience a different level of reality. Yet one has to be asleep in order to dream. So to sleep is to enter a world of darkness because we're not in control of ourselves when we sleep. We're not able to consciously guide our inner vision and awareness. When we sleep, we are disconnected from our surroundings, from our self-imposed conception of reality. It's in this unconscious state of darkness that we dream. Thus, our sages teach that, generally speaking, a dream will invariably feature a certain degree of nonsense. Our unconscious minds present us with intangible imagery swayed by imagination, possibly tinged by fears, anxiety, and fiction. Many factors can influence a dream. One's most inconsequential thoughts during the day can turn into a terrible nightmare. Even what one ate can cause a dream. So, to paraphrase the prophet Zechariah in chapter 10 and verse 2, dreamers speak lies. But yet, there are exceptions. Not all dreams are false. A dream can contain an element of prophecy. The misrepresentation within that darkness can be winnowed so that the dream may be clarified to present a revelation of a higher godly truth, illuminating an inner vision that is higher than the scope of ordinary waking human vision. Beyond ordinary borders, where human vision ends, prophetic vision begins, and a dream can convey prophetic illusion. This is the meaning of our sages' teaching, that a dream can be 1/60th of the experience of prophecy. But there seems to be an inner contradiction here. On the one hand, from a rational human perspective, since a dream occurs during sleep when a person is not in control, it can be likened to a hallucination, the mind simply recycling meaningless and disconnected thoughts. Yet still in all, from the depths of a darkness that is largely controlled by imagination and false images, because one's guard is down, specifically because one's guard is down and all presumptions are temporarily suspended, a dream can shine forth a sparkling revelation of the highest truth, literally a message from above. Open up your heart. This is an aspect of this secret reflected by Song of Songs chapter 5 and verse 2. I was asleep, but my heart was awake. So listen. God determined that Israel's exile in Egypt was a necessary stage in his plan, and the saga of Yosef and his brothers needs to be understood in the context of God's preparation for the nation of Israel to endure the experience of the upcoming Egyptian exile and ultimately to be redeemed and merit to the Exodus. Indeed, shadows were already gathering on the horizon, and the descendants of Yaakov and his children would soon enter that world of darkness. All this was an aspect of the covenant that Hashem made with Abraham back in Parashat Lech Lecha in Genesis chapter 15 at the event known as the covenant between the parts, when God informed Abraham, "Know with certainty that your offspring will be strangers in a land not their own, and they will serve them, and they will be oppressed by them for 400 years. It's Yosef's dreams that cause him to descend down to Egypt, and he is the one who brings his brothers and his father down after him. But now, open up your heart deeper still. See, the dreams of Yosef HaTzadik are more than just an essential part of fulfilling that covenant. He is the epicenter of the entire Egyptian exile. It all hinges on Yosef. First, he provided for his brethren in Egypt. Then, as we will learn in the beginning of the book of Exodus, Israel's enslavement only began when a new king arose who did not know Yosef. And before Yosef died, at the end of Parashat Vayechi in Genesis chapter 50, it is he who foretold of the redemption, assuring the children of Israel that God will surely remember them. and at the time of the Exodus, his bones go out with them. Why did it have to be him? Why is Yosef at the center of it all? So, on the one level, we always see that the children of Rachel precede the children of Leah. Rachel's children paved the way, kickstarting the redemption. Thus, King Saul of the tribe of Benjamin, a descendant of Rachel, was the first king preceding King David, the descendant of Leah's son Yehudah. Ovadia the prophet tells us that it is the house of Yosef who will destroy Esav. King Saul was commanded to destroy Amalek. Haman fell to Mordechai of Benjamin. Yosef, whose guise of Mashiach ben Yosef manifests itself throughout history until the redemption, prepares the physical structure, and thus he ruled in the spiritual darkness of Egypt before Yehudah and his brothers arrived there, because the force of Mashiach ben Yosef precedes and prepares the way for Mashiach ben David, which corresponds to the inner spiritual dimension. But there is something else. Mired as they were in the decadence of Egypt, the fledgling nation of Israel was in danger of suffering irreparable spiritual damage. The prophet Ezekiel speaks of this, as we find in chapter 20 and verse 7. And I said to them, every man, cast away the detestable idols of his eyes. Do not defile yourselves with the idols of Egypt. I am Hashem your God. Yosef grew up in the heart of this culture, in Pharaoh's house. He was second in command of all of Egypt, deeply involved in that alien culture, but yet remaining totally righteous and totally faithful to Hashem. Only Yosef could demonstrate the perfect example of preserving integrity, identity, and purity in a foreign land. He never changed. He was at tzaddik when he was in prison, cast down low but never despairing, and realizing that the hand of Hashem was always upon him. And he remained at tzaddik when he was catapulted to the pinnacle of power as Pharaoh's viceroy. It's a great challenge to be in the midst of the darkness of this world and yet remain pure. Both being at the bottom and being at the top can force us to compromise on beliefs and values. Yosef's lows and highs parallel the experience of the Jewish people in exile, but his secret was staying focused on Hashem. Now we understand Yaakov's cryptic response to Yosef's dream. Ve'aviv shamar et hadavar, and his father kept it in mind. Literally, he watched the matter. He anticipated it. As Rashi teaches, he knew its time would come, and he waited. Waited for what? For all of them to bow down to Yosef? No, Yaakov understood that Yosef's dreams were portraying something far greater, something connected to all his children's future exile in Egypt. He saw that it would be in the merit of Yosef's righteousness that they would ultimately be redeemed from there. This is exactly why Yosef told over his dreams to his brothers. They saw it as arrogance, that in his conceit, Yosef was attempting to rule over them. And this sparked their jealousy and hatred. But did he tell them his dreams to make them jealous? Yosef understood the true meaning of his prophetic dreams, that he was being given a task from heaven, and he knew that everything was depending on him. Despite the great personal cost it would require of him, he understood that he must pave the way for them and sustain them, both physically, through the food that he alone would be able to provide, and spiritually, through the example of his immutable righteousness. Yaakov knew the dreams were prophetic, and he waited for them to come to fruition. Now, open up your heart deeper than ever before in your whole life. Because of his great righteousness, Yosef is able to successfully interface with the material world, and thus he's able to rule in Egypt, of all places, the heart of darkness and impurity, the narrow place. Yosef himself is the light that descends into the darkness and illuminates it. Yosef is the dreamer, because his light penetrates the sleep-like world of darkness. The ability to descend into Egypt and ascend again is only made possible by holding on to a dream, the shining light within the darkness. The Hashmonaim priests, the Maccabee heroes of the Chanukah story, held fast to their dream of Hashem's promises. Our sages liken the Greek suppression of Israel to darkness. During the time that the Chanukah victory commemorates, when the Greeks invaded the land of Israel and defiled the Holy Temple, they enacted decrees against maintaining a Jewish identity, against manifesting belief in the one God. And about that time, our sages used the expression that they darkened the eyes of Israel. They inflicted a man-made darkness of human intellect over Israel, attempting to banish godly wisdom. The miracle of the oil that kindled the menorah is the triumph of godly light over this darkness. This is Yosef's secret, what his righteousness brought to the world. So apropos, in the confluence of his story with Chanukah, his life is the ray of light in the darkness. Thank you for watching this week's Jerusalem Lights Torah portion, and thank you for being a part of our community. Please consider supporting these productions, which enables Jerusalem Lights to share Torah for everyone. Blessings for Shabbat Shalom and Chag Orim Sameach. Blessings for a joyous, light-filled Chanukah.